Hi, my name is Hannah Carter, and I'll never forget the smirk on my parents' faces the night they compared me to my brother. It wasn't the first time, not by a long shot, but it was the last. Over Sunday dinner, the kind we'd had every week for as long as I could remember, Dad chuckled, a low rumble in his chest. Mom joined in, a high, tinkling sound that always made my stomach clench. And together, their voices braided into a single, sharp weapon. They said the words that finally shattered me. You'll never be as good as your brother. For years, I had stayed silent when they mocked me. I had smiled politely, nodded, and changed the subject. I had swallowed the hurt until it became a hard, indigestible lump in my throat. But that night something in me broke. The silence I had carefully built around myself cracked wide open. I stood up from that table, my hand shaking but my voice clear, and said words that would change everything forever. To understand that night, you have to understand my childhood in Ohio. Our house was a shrine to my older brother, Adam. The mantelpiece wasn't for family photos. It was for his trophies. The refrigerator was covered not in my crayon drawings, but by Adam's perfect report cards, each one a neat row of straight A's. Adam was their pride. He moved through the world as if it owed him everything, and my parents did nothing to discourage that belief. When he made the varsity football team as a freshman, Dad bought him a new car. When he got a full scholarship to Ohio State, Mom threw a party for the entire neighborhood. His successes were public events, celebrated with fanfare and applause. Me? I was the quiet one, the afterthought. My world was in sketchbooks filled with charcoal portraits and watercolor landscapes. My parents saw my art as a cute hobby, a girlish pastime that I would eventually outgrow. They never saw it as a passion, and certainly not as a future. I remember when I was 10, I won first place in a citywide art competition. I ran home clutching the blue ribbon and a $50 gift certificate, my heart pounding with excitement. I won, I announced in the kitchen. Dad glanced at it over his newspaper. That's nice, honey, he said before his eyes went right back to the sports section. Mom just told me not to get paint on the floor. That evening, Adam came home with a small plastic trophy for Most Improved Player, a participation award. Dad cleared a space on the mantelpiece right in the center. We went out for ice cream to celebrate. My blue ribbon sat on the kitchen counter, forgotten. That was the pattern of my life. I was told to stay out of the way when Adam had friends over. I was told to keep the noise down when he was studying. The biggest laugh came when I announced I wanted to go to art school. I had spent months preparing my portfolio and laid it all out for them at the dinner table. Dad picked up the brochure and let out a short, sharp laugh. Art school? Hannah, be serious. What are you going to do with an art degree? Mom chimed in with her familiar, gentle disappointment. Honey, it's a wonderful hobby, but you need a real career. Something stable. Like your brother. Adam was studying business, of course. Their dismissal was so complete that I didn't have the words to fight back. I ended up going to a local community college for graphic design, because it was the most practical art form I could convince them to tolerate. Even when I landed internships, they dismissed it as luck. Every success of mine was a ghost, invisible and fleeting, lost in Adam's long, dark shadow. The comparisons didn't stop when we became adults. If anything, they got worse. Family holidays were the main stage for my public humiliation. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter. They were all just opportunities for my parents to hold court and sing Adam's praises. He had graduated with honors and was climbing the corporate ladder with predictable speed. I remember one Christmas Eve vividly. The house was warm, smelling of pine and roast turkey. Aunts, uncles, and cousins filled the living room. Mom was standing in the center of the room, a glass of wine in her hand, her face glowing. And Adam, she announced, just got another promotion. He's a senior manager now. Can you believe it? He just bought himself a new BMW. The room erupted in a chorus of oohs and ahs. Everyone turned to Adam, who was leaning against the doorway, smirking. Later, my aunt turned to me. And what about you, Hannah? She asked kindly. Before I could even open my mouth, Mom answered for me. Oh, Hannah's still doing her little computer drawings, she said with a dismissive wave. Freelance work. It keeps her busy. I had just completed a massive project for a new tech startup, designing their entire user interface from scratch. The client was thrilled and had already offered me another contract. It was a huge step for my career. I tried to explain. Actually, I just finished a big project for a software company. That's nice, Hannah. Mom cut me off, her eyes already scanning the room for someone else to talk to. But did you hear Adam is thinking of buying a condo downtown? And just like that, I was erased. My achievement was reduced to nice. I learned to swallow my pride, to stop trying to share my life with them. But the pride I swallowed didn't just disappear. It sat in my gut hot and heavy. It burned like rage, and with every passing year it got hotter. That Sunday night, the night it all ended, started like any other. We sat at the long oak table in the dining room, a room that always felt too formal for just the four of us. The air was thick with the smell of Mom's pot roast and the unspoken rules of our family. Adam shines, Hannah recedes. Adam, my perfect brother, sat across from me, smiling that smug, easy smile of his. He was talking about his latest triumph at work, some big account he had landed. My boss said he's never seen anything like it, he concluded, leaning back in his chair. He's already talking about making me a director. Oh, Adam, that's wonderful, Mom gushed. That's my boy, Dad said, pointing his fork at him. A real go-getter, they beamed at him. Then, as if remembering I was there, my father turned his gaze to me. The warmth in his eyes instantly cooled. So, he said, his tone shifting, what have you been up to, Hannah? Still messing around with those little sketches of yours? The phrase was a deliberate jab. He knew I was a professional designer. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice even. I'm working on a new project, actually. It's a digital design system for... He cut me off with a wave of his hand. Right. A project. He looked at Mom and they exchanged a look of shared pity and condescension. It was the look they reserved just for me. Then came the chuckle. It started with Dad, a low rumble. Mom joined in, her high-pitched laugh following his like an echo. Adam just smirked, watching me, and then they said it. Dad leaned forward and looked me right in the eye. You know, Hannah, he said, the smile never leaving his face. We're proud of you for trying, but you'll never be as good as your brother. The laughter that followed was the worst part. It wasn't gentle. It was sharp and cruel. It was the sound of my entire life being weighed, measured, and found wanting. It was the sound of them confirming my deepest fear, that in their eyes, I would never, ever be enough. Something inside me snapped. The years of forced smiles, of biting my tongue, of shrinking myself to make room for my brother's ego, it all fell away. The fork in my hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy. My blood was roaring in my ears, drowning out their laughter. I placed my fork and knife down on my plate. I pushed back my chair, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor. A raw, grating sound that made them all stop laughing and turn to look at me. My voice shook when I started, but it grew stronger with every word. I looked straight at Adam, at his smug face that had haunted me my entire life, then tell him to keep up with me when the world finally sees my work. The room froze. Adam rolled his eyes, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. This was just his weird little sister having a tantrum. Dad sneered, his face hardening. Work? He scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. You mean your little sketches? There it was again. Little sketches. The two words he used to shrink my world down to nothing. The old Hannah would have crumbled. But the old Hannah was gone. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say to them. Arguing would be pointless. Without another word, I turned, picked up my bag, and walked out of the dining room. I didn't run. I walked slowly, each step an act of finality. I heard my mother call my name, her voice a confused, angry question. I didn't look back. I walked down the hallway, past the gallery of Adam's achievements, and pulled open the front door. The cool night air hit my face. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me, the soft click of the latch sounding as loud as a gunshot. For the next 6 months, I lived in silence. I didn't answer their calls or reply to their texts. I let them all go to voicemail. I had walked out of their lives, and I needed the space to build my own. My apartment became my sanctuary and my workshop. The anger from that last dinner didn't fade. Instead, it transformed. It cooled and hardened into something clean and sharp. Focus. Every condescending word, every dismissive laugh became fuel. My little sketches were not little. For 5 years, I had been working on something big, a new kind of digital design system that was intuitive, streamlined, and could revolutionize how artists worked. It wasn't just an idea. I had built it. A year ago, using every penny of my savings, I had hired a lawyer and secretly filed a patent for the core algorithm of my system. It was all in my name. Mine. A few months before I walked out, I had started collaborating with a small tech startup in New York. We had weekly video calls where I was no longer Adam's little sister, but the lead designer, the architect of the project. They treated me with a respect I had never known. Now, free from the weight of my family's judgment, I threw myself into the work completely. Their mocking voices became a mantra. Little sketches. The words would echo as I worked through the night, pushing me to make every line cleaner. You'll never be as good as your brother. The memory of their laughter would flash in my mind, and I would work harder, driven by a cold, quiet rage. The startup, Orion Tech, had secured a massive round of funding, all based on the promise of my design system. They were planning a huge launch, a branding deal valued at $200 million, and my patent was the centerpiece of it all. I was building my revenge not with angry words, but with code, with design, with silent, relentless work. The night it happened was a Saturday. I knew from an unwanted text from my aunt that the family was gathering at my parents' house to celebrate Adam. He had officially been made a director at his firm. I wasn't at the party. I was in my apartment, on a video call with the CEO of Orion Tech, a man named Ben. We were doing a final systems check before the official launch. Everything looks perfect. "Hannah," Ben said, his face tired but excited on my laptop screen. "You ready to be famous?" We finished the call, and I sat there in the quiet of my apartment. For a moment, a wave of the old sadness washed over me. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ben. "It's live. Check the business channel." My heart started to pound. It was happening. Now. My hands trembled as I found the remote and flipped to the local business channel, the one my father watched religiously. And there it was. My face. A professional headshot was on the screen, next to the sleek logo I had designed. The news anchor's voice filled my small apartment. In a stunning move for the tech world, New York-based startup Orion Tech has today launched its groundbreaking new design platform. The deal, valued in the hundreds of millions, is built around a revolutionary system created by a local designer. A name you'll want to remember, Hannah Carter. My breath caught in my throat. He said my name. My phone started to explode. It buzzed and lit up on the coffee table with texts, emails, and notifications, and then a text from my cousin, the one who was at the party. "OMG, Hannah. Everyone is freaking out. Your dad just dropped his glass." I closed my eyes and pictured it. I saw the faces turning toward the TV. I saw my mother's gasp. I saw my father frozen, his wine glass slipping from his hand to shatter on the floor. And I saw Adam, the center of attention just moments before, his perfect smile finally collapsing as my face, my name, and my success filled the room and stole his spotlight forever. The calls started within minutes. First, my mother, her voice a high-pitched, frantic mess. "Hannah? What is going on? Your cousin just showed me an article. It says you made some kind of deal? Why didn't you tell us?" Her question was so absurd that I almost laughed. "Tell you? When have you ever listened?" I kept my voice calm. There was nothing to tell. I was working. Working? This says millions of dollars. "We're your family. Are you?" I asked, and the question hung in the air. I heard my father yelling in the background. "Give me the phone." His voice boomed through the receiver, but it was a panicked, desperate anger. The anger of a man who had just lost control. "Hannah, what is this?" he demanded. "Why didn't you give us a chance to support you?" That was the line that broke my composure. Support? The word was a slap in the face. All I could see was their smirking faces at the dinner table. "Support me?" I said, my voice now cold and hard. "You had 25 years to support me. Where was your support when I told you I wanted to go to art school? Where was it last Sunday when you laughed in my face?" There was a stunned silence. "You didn't want to support me," I continued, my voice low and steady. "You just wanted me to be the failure so he could be the success." I had one more thing to say, one final truth to deliver. "You told me I'd never be as good as Adam," I said, the words clear and precise. "You were right. I'm better." I didn't wait for a response. I ended the call and turned my phone off. The silence that filled my apartment was the most peaceful sound I had ever heard. In the days that followed, I ignored the calls from my family and relatives. Their opinions, their validation, their anger. It was all irrelevant now. Their power over me was broken. The laughter that had haunted my life was finally gone. I hadn't screamed at them or listed every grievance. My success was the only argument that mattered, and it was an argument they could never win. A week later, Orion Tech flew me to New York to begin my new life. As I packed up my small apartment, I felt a profound sense of lightness. I was leaving the ghost of Adam's little sister behind in Ohio. On the plane, I had a window seat. I watched as my hometown grew smaller and smaller, eventually disappearing into the clouds. I wasn't filled with triumph or a desire for revenge. That cold fire that had driven me for so long had burned itself out, leaving behind a quiet, steady warmth. It wasn't joy, not yet. It was peace. I had spent my entire life trying to win a game that was rigged against me. The moment I stopped playing by their rules and started writing my own was the moment I finally won. I didn't need their applause. I had my own. I was free. That was the night my life turned. That was the night I took back my own story. If you've ever been told you'll never be good enough, if you've ever been made to feel small so that someone else could feel big, remember this: silence can become your strongest weapon. Your work, your passion, your dedication, that can become your loudest revenge. Like, subscribe, and drop a comment if you've ever had to prove yourself against the odds. Your story might inspire someone else tonight.